Hello and welcome again to Tommy Travers' prediction on the rugby matches on the weekends. We have three matches coming up, France and Scotland, England and Wales, and Ireland has Italy this weekend. Now, when they're playing these small matches, as they call them, or against teams that you should win easy, I'm always sort of worried about that, you know what I mean? But they should win it anyway, you know what I mean? Now, there's talks that they're going to play Johnny Sexton. Now, I can understand them going to play Johnny Sexton in one way, because it can get him up to the sharpness, his match fitness. But I'd rather if Johnny Sexton wasn't playing. Now, I don't know for sure if he's playing or not, because the team hasn't been named yet, but the word is that he is to be playing. And I just prefer John if he wasn't playing. Oh, I forgot to say there, John White is joining me today for his expert analysis as usual. So, John, what do you think about that?
Oh, I'm just happy to be introduced as an expert. That's the best. That'll go on my CV. I think. Yeah, like you said, there are a lot of rumors coming around. I think I saw Murray Kinsella, the 42.ie writer, put that out, and if he's saying it, normally it's pretty reliable. I would agree. I think it's probably a mistake to start Sexton, just because when you look at the other 10s that are in the squad, I think that was Carberry's first ever Six Nations start.
It was,
I think, wasn't it? Like that's wild. Like, and if he's the backup 10 going into the World Cup, like, even if it is Italy, no disrespect intended, then you've got to give him more game time. I would say start Carty and give them a half each. Realistically, it's very unlikely that Italy are going to win this game. And I do understand the logic of starting your first team, because should Scotland win against France, which we'll talk about a bit later on, I think, that is going to mean that there's no unbeaten team left in the tournament, which means points difference could be incredibly important. So I understand the logic of wanting to run up a big score against Italy, but I think developing your backup 10s is far more, should be higher up the list of priorities. And if Ireland play like they did last week against France with Carberry, then I don't think there's any concern that they would leave with a bonus point and a very healthy points difference. I don't fall on the side of worrying about risking Sexton's fitness or anything like that. Obviously, you would bear that in mind. I just think it's about giving other players game time.
Yeah, I have to say now, John, on this issue, yourself and myself, we're in agreement with this, I think. You know what I mean? Now, if I was running the team, John, I definitely wouldn't start Sexton in this match. Now, you are after making a very good point about the points difference, but I think Carberry, you're right. Carberry started that match. That was the last day, was Carberry's first start. Now that's unbelievable. Like, when you look at Carberry, how experienced player he is and all. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. But now, as I said before, John, what you call him? He's the manager. Pandle is the manager, and that's it. We're not running it. But I think it will be. Like all the guys that do these, all the rugby players and all that do these podcasts and do all the talking on the match and all, they probably might bring this up as well. I don't know whether they would or not. They may,
Yeah, but I think there is an argument.
I know, John.
I was going to say, I think there is an argument to starting Sexton and seeing if you can run up the score and then bring on Carberry or Carty. But I just think
you're probably right there, John. Yeah.
No, that's probably what they're going for, because it is, in a way, it's kind of like the best of both worlds. But I don't think, in terms of game experience, like it's far less valuable to come on as a 10 and run the show when you've already made the other team's heads drop.
Exactly.
There's like it's I mean, there's potentially that won't happen with Italy, because despite the sort of doom and gloom surrounding them being nilled by England 2 weekends back, or sorry, that in the last round, um, like I did actually think that they were quite impressive throughout, and I thought they held their fitness for the entire game. So maybe Italy aren't that side that sort of get overwhelmed by what's happening to them anymore. So there's an argument there as well, but I just think it's
Yeah.
I just think it's still a bit much
Well,
to
well, they were
to start a player that you protect that much in this game.
Yeah. Well, they were doing well, John, against France. Weren't they beating France at the start in that match?
Yeah.
Now, I only seen a bit of that match, but I can remember that someone saying that, or I looked at the highlights or something, and they were winning that match. One time, I think, as far as I know, John, they beat Ireland once. As far as I know, and only once. Now, I think Brian O'Driscoll and all them was playing. Now, I think it was in Italy, but they did beat Ireland once, So soccer is a completely different game. But look at Spurs, John. They beat Manchester City 3-2 last weekend, and they were playing Burnley last night, and they were beaten 1-0. So you just don't know, like, what's football or any type of rugby, soccer, Gaelic football, any of these sports. There's always a danger that the other team could win. You know what I mean? Now, I don't think that's going to happen this time. Or if it does, well, be the biggest shock, probably going to be the biggest shock of this century. Anyway, because it's only what,
It probably
21,
would be.
22
I mean,
years old.
Italy do have some very individually talented players. Paolo Garbisi, who's their starting 10. How old is he? Is he maybe like 22? Might be
Right.
younger. I can't remember. Maybe he's older. I can't remember. But he's very young. He's in his early 20s, and he's playing very, very well so far. They're playing a centre out of position on a wing. I can't remember. I'm struggling to remember his name now. It's quite embarrassing. Minori, I think his name is.
Right.
And his defense has been pretty weak. I'd be interested if he starts again, like England just exploited him over and over and over again. In the last round, I'd be surprised to see him start again, but I'm not sure who comes in from the squad to replace him. There are good players. Stephen Varney, the scrum half, he's had a bit of a dodgy tournament so far. He was very good last year. And yeah, so there are good shoots there, but there's also a few players having not great tournaments. I'd be surprised. Really, I think it's grim, but you kind of have to talk about how much Ireland are going to win by, and potentially how much Italy are actually going to score. I think if Italy come away with 10 points, that could be seen as good for them. Unfortunately, now France did actually show a little bit of a weakness in Ireland's defense on I think it was their first try, which was really good. Which was they were quite easily able to manipulate Ireland's defensive line, where they were able to get both centres positioned at the same spot, and then they were able to, I think, take Aki out.
Yeah.
And then they passed the ball really far wide, and Mac Hansen, who is still kind of finding his feet in international rugby, had to take the spot of the 13 in the defensive line, and it caused a huge gap that Entmac was able to get through, I think, and then offload. So like there are weaknesses there to be exploited, like in any team.
Yeah,
Whether Italy are going to be good enough, because that was actually really interesting, because that was France showed a really clever way of breaking down the Irish defence when they did that, and kind of a little bit of a blueprint that you'd be worried that you could see England, potentially Scotland as well, doing that as well in the last two rounds. Um, I don't think Italy will be able to exploit that as much. So um, yeah, I just think you're talking definitely bonus point win for Ireland. But
yeah.
like by how much really wouldn't be that, like, especially in the Aviva, like at Lansdowne Road, Ireland, you might as well add 20 points onto it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ireland won by 30 plus. Really wouldn't be.
Yeah. Well, there was an Irish bloke, John, used to run Italy. I think Conor O'Shea was his name. It's
Yeah.
a few years ago now.
Mm.
And I can't remember exactly this now, but they were playing in some match. And whatever way it was working out, I don't fully understand the offside in the rugby.
Oh, this is like my
Whatever
favorite
way
game
it
to
was
talk about.
going,
This is my favorite game to talk about of all time.
is
This
it?
is yeah, this is great. Like that was the genius of Conor O'Shea. And before we talk about this game, Conor O'Shea actually did something far, far better for Italy than just this game, which is he put in place proper age grade pathways, which are starting to bear fruit. Because I don't know if you saw this, but the night before the Italy men's team were beaten 33-0 by England. I think it was 33. They actually, the under-20s Italians actually beat England 6-0, and that's the first time the Italy under-20s have ever beaten England. So Conor O'Shea actually put in a really good age pathway, which hopefully in a couple of years, I mean, it's already bearing fruit because players like Paolo Garbisi have come through that. So it's really,
Yeah.
the hope is that within a few years, that as that under-20s team matures and moves into the adults, the seniors,
Yeah.
that'll actually bear some fruit. Now that aside, this rugby match, right? So what happens is I'll explain the offside line, the offside rule to you.
Yeah.
So the offside rule, now what I'm going to explain now is actually the offside rule in a couple of years ago, because the rule changed because of this match, pretty much actually. So the offside rule, it used to be that when a ruck was formed, the offside line would be created. Now, offside in rugby means that you can't go beyond the line, because the moment you go beyond the line, you become ineligible to tackle a player, try and take possession of the ball, catch a kick. I would say catch a pass, but to be honest, that doesn't really go for an intercept. I suppose you can't catch a pass offside because it would be a forward pass by definition. So, but the interesting thing there is that the offside line was created from the ruck. So the definition of a ruck at that point was that a player had to be a part of it to contest the ruck. So if you think of, you have your player, you have your ball carrier, and you have your tackler, and they go to ground, that technically was not considered a ruck in the old rules, because an opposition player, a defending player, hadn't joined to try and steal the ball or tried to slow down the opposition or the attacking ball generation. So that technically means there's no offside line. Now, rugby's a kind of bit weird, because when you look at the laws in rugby, there's a bit of like, there's often a few things you can exploit, but people don't, because it's seen as against the values of the game or whatever. So Conor O'Shea goes up to the match officials a few days beforehand and says, like, look, this is what we're planning to do. We are not going to be putting players in to contest at the breakdown, which, based on my reading of the rules, means that there will be no ruck formed. And if there's no ruck formed, there's no offside line. So because there's no offside line, they're able to run beyond the breakdown and flap their arms in the air. And just tackle players, and it was amazing. It was fantastic. And I mean, I've never seen so many people, angry fans, and Eddie Jones was livid and all this. And Conor O'Shea, in fairness to him, in his interview after, said he said in his interview afterwards, we were never going to win conventionally, so we have to be creative in how we do it. And I think it just, for everyone who wasn't an English fan, it just added to their love of Italy to a degree. Like, it's really hard to not cheer for Italy when they're even playing your own team. I find a lot of the time,
Exactly,
if I'm watching Italy play Wales, I will cheer every time they score a try. I love them, especially, and it's easy as well because when Stephen Varney plays, he's actually from just down the road from me. He's a Welsh speaker as well, I think. So it's just like it's especially when he was playing fantastically last season. It's always a joy to cheer for Italy for me. But the other thing coming back to that is that Eddie Jones complained to World Rugby and got that law changed, so that the offside line is created from a tackle. And I'm struggling to remember exactly what this was, but I don't think it was the World Cup final. It was an important rugby match that England lost. It wasn't the World Cup final because they lost that handily enough. But it may be a Six Nations match or something. Yeah. But they lost the game based on No, I'm not talking about the Italy game now. What I'm saying is that Eddie Jones complained and the law got changed by World Rugby to change the way the offside line was created. And then a year or so later, England lost a very important game. It might have been to win them the Six Nations or something like that. I'm struggling to remember it. But the reason they lost it was because the offside rule had changed. So if Eddie Jones hadn't complained about getting the offside law changed, then that they wouldn't have lost that game. Essentially, it was very cathartic for a lot of people because he was so angry after the game and complained about it for so long. I've gone on a massive tangent on this, so I do love that game is one of my favorites to watch back, especially for the bit where James Haskell goes up to who's the referee in that? I don't think it's not Roman Poit, is it? He goes up to the referee and says, how do we? Okay, so they're doing this, and the offside line is there. That's right, isn't it? And the referee says, yes, it is, yeah. And James Haskell says, so what do we do about that? And he goes, I'm just the referee. I'm not your coach. Yeah. It was very, very good. Anyway, Ireland to win by 30 points. That's why.
I'm going for Ireland in that. John, just to say this, now I'm not going to spend too long on it, but the very same thing happened in the Gaelic football about going back to the 2000s. It was 2003. Now, it might have happened a while before that. And in the Gaelic, Tyrone were playing Kerry in an All-Ireland semi-final. And the normal position with the Gaelic was that the players sort of played in their normal positions. You had 3 forwards, half forwards, midfield, half backs, full backs, and goalkeeper. But Mickey Hart was running Tyrone, and he came up with this idea of bringing back 3 half forwards. Now, I would want to draw it out on a piece of paper to show people, but the people that follow Gaelic be able to understand it. Now, I'm not saying, John, you'll be able to understand it as well, but what they done was they brought back, when they lost the ball, they brought back the 3 half forwards into the defence, and they clogged up the whole area, and Kerry couldn't get through, and they were kicking the ball again, fellas, backs and arses and everything, and they couldn't get through, and Tyrone won the game. And Pat Spillane is from Kerry, and he's one of the that does it. And he was raging over that. Do you know what I mean? He called it puke football, and there was murder over it. But John, the way I look at it is, now it doesn't look good if you're a neutral, but it's all about, to me, it's all about results. Do you know? That's all that matters. It doesn't matter how you do it. Once you win the game, that's all that matters to me. Do you know what I mean? You are not there. The manager and the management team is not there to give entertainment. They are there to win. And you win whatever way you can. And that's the very same thing as what Conor O'Shea done, only just difference.
Yeah.
Actual
And actually, do you know what? Just as a little caveat to finish that off with, I think Italy might have gone in at halftime leading that match, or they might have been drawing. I don't think they were losing it. But when they came out after halftime, England started doing the exact same thing. They weren't committing to the ruck, and they ran onto the other side, and they were flapping the hands and trying to take out the line. And it was just like, I felt like I was watching the sport evolve in real time. Now, to be fair, it's probably a good thing that the rule were changed, because it wasn't a great spectacle if we were watching that every match. But you know, they adapted. That's the important thing. You know,
John, the way the Gaelic is now, all the teams are doing this. Nearly them all are doing it, because you have to. Soon as they lose possession, nearly everyone is back in defence, and it's very hard to get through. Actually, Kildare find it's very hard to get through these defences when you clog it all up. So it's all tactics. It's all whoever comes up with these ideas. And sometimes, like Tyrone, John, hadn't won an All-Ireland until 2003. They won in 2005, 2008, and they won last year. They'd never won an All-Ireland before that. You know, they were in finals and they lost. You know what I mean? So it just shows you. And it's all, like, I'll tell you one thing, Tyrone weren't worried about anyone saying that it's defensive football and it's not good to look at. They were all Ireland champions. They had the cup up in the north, and they had it last year as well. And the Bet carried the semi-final last year as well. You know, so they are a bit of a bogey team. But look, you have to get back onto the rugby again.
Oh yeah, can I mention one? If we're going off and talking about other sports, can I mention one of my favourite ones actually is curling.
Oh.
So curling, like, I don't know if you ever watch it. I'm addicted. I love curling. But like, guard stones in curling, I remember when they came in, first of all, people said all that it's against the spirit of the game. It's anti-aggressive. Obviously, it's defensive play, but it's just like they're saying, it's just not entertaining to watch and all this, that, the other. And now you just couldn't imagine watching the sport without it. So it's, you know, these things happen, and sometimes it's for the better of the sport, and sometimes, like in rugby, they choose to change the rules. Talking about changing the rules, one of the other matches, obviously we've got the 50-22 rule that's new this year and this season. Are you familiar with that, Tommy? That rule change?
I'm not, John. No.
So the 50-22 is, so when you're playing rugby, there's lots of rules based on how the ball, if you kick the ball and it goes into touch, how that is, how the line out is awarded. So if you are within your own 22 and you kick and it goes straight out into touch, then the opposing team gets the kick. Oh, sorry, the opposing team gets the line out from where the ball crossed the line. If you are outside of your 22 and you kick and it goes out over the line without bouncing, then the opposing team gets the line out from the point where it was kicked. If you're, trust me, this is important. It's important for the 50-22 if you're not familiar with it. And then if you kick from outside your 22 and it bounces first and then goes out, the other team gets the line out throw. Now the difference now is that the 50-22 rule is if you kick from within your own half and the ball bounces and then goes out inside the opposition 22, the kicking team gets the throw in at the line out. It's a huge, it's a really big rule change. And it's generally designed. What it's for is not just to promote that kind of attacking kicking. It's to try and encourage teams to have more players defending in the backfield. So the defensive lines aren't as well staffed. You know, they're not so well manned. So you're probably more likely to find a gap in there to break through. So it's actually there to design running rugby. But I think the Wales-England game is going to be a very interesting one. I think that rule is probably going to get trotted out a fair bit because Like you're talking about having Josh Adams and Liam Williams, who are both very good kickers. Dan Bigger as well in for Wales, and England aren't looking as well stocked in that sort of back three, and they're definitely not, they don't have the kicking game that Wales has. So I expect to see them doing a lot of kicking back into their half and try and pin them back and get them to run deep.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say to you, John. Years and years ago now, going back to, you know what I mean? As I said to you, you're only a young man, you wouldn't even remember this. But at one time on the rugby, I think they used to get the ball, and if we just say for Ireland has the ball, and they kick the ball into touch, out a play, right? And it'd be a line out. But now they kick the ball straight up the middle, and if the other player is there or off the other team, he gets it and they kick it back again. So why are they doing that so much, John? They're trying to get into a position where they get the put in, the throw in, the line out, I mean, and they have the throw in.
It's
Is
not
that it?
well when you're kicking downfield, you're not necessarily like, I mean, there's multiple reasons why you would do it over, say, kick into touch for the line out. So first of all, kick into touch for the line out, unless it's a 50-22 kick where you retain possession, you're talking about you're giving over possession to the other team. Now, if you can kick very far down, it doesn't matter that you give possession over, because even if they win the line out and they kick back, you're probably still going to be in net positive in terms of territory. So it doesn't matter so much there. But when you're talking about kicking downfield, there's a few reasons you might be doing that. I think a lot of people find this really boring to watch on the TV, but if you're actually at a match and watching it, you can see what they're doing. Normally, kickers are actually trying to manipulate space in the backfield. So they will generally, a lot of defenses will use like what's called a pendulum system, and that means that, so maybe they've got like 14 players in their defensive line and they've got one person or two people in the backfield. Now, say that person is in the middle of the backfield and I want to manipulate them out of there and try and bring a weaker defender to go into the backfield who might not be so good at
knock the ball on.
Yeah, or maybe, well, not so much that, but might be a worse kicker, say. So like, let's use the example of, say I was playing against Wales. You've got Liam Williams at 15 who's in the backfield. He's very, very good under the high ball, very, very good at taking kicks. Like, he's one of the most dangerous fullbacks in world rugby still, I think, in my red tinted glasses. But there's Alex Cuthbert who's on one of the wings, and he is nowhere near as good. Like, he's very good ball in hand, but when it comes to kicking, no great shakes. So what I might do is I might try and kick away from Cuthbert's wing into that half of the pitch to lead Liam Williams into chasing that ball to get it. Now, in a pendulum system, as Liam Williams moves over to cover that kick and kicks back, Alex Cuthbert is going to move off of his wing and cover a section in the backfield. So at that point, you've got two players probably covering in the backfield. So, and I've got the ball again, and I'm saying, okay, so what do I do from here? Do I kick down the middle and try and split them and they get confused and they both try and run for it, leaving space out on the side? Maybe even the third back three player, the other winger, comes in to try and cover that. Or do I say, all right, now I kicked for Cuthbert, because I know that Cuthbert's unlikely to want to kick it back. So either he's going to pass it to someone else or he's going to try and run it himself, and I can send a winger or I can send someone up to try and cut him down and gain territory that way. Or am I saying I'm trying to manipulate the space so that there's room out wide on a corner where I might be able to get a 50-22 kick in? So those kicks, even though they kind of look aimless, especially if you're watching it on TV, this is why if I'm in a stadium, I like to sit behind posts high up because you can see all this really easily. What they're generally doing is they're trying to manipulate the shape of the backfield. They're trying to bring in less effective players into the game and try and make them chase. And so, like, for example, in the Italy game with Ireland, that's probably likely to be quite one-sided because Paolo Garbisi is a good kicker, but the rest are kind of standard. Whereas Ireland is always talked about having a really good kicking game. I think it's kind of lazy that a lot of pundits say, "Oh, it's the GAA heritage," like people they're very good at it.
Yeah,
maybe there's something to it. But one of the best GA players I think in the Ireland setup is Ty Furlong, and he doesn't kick that often. When he does, it's good though. Like for Wales, England, like I expect a lot of kicking in that game. Because I think they're starting two. Are they starting two fullbacks? England. I need to check the lineup again.
I'm not sure.
I think Stewart and Mallins are both playing. I don't watch enough Premiership rugby.
Right.
I think they both cover fullback before, so it could be a really interesting one. In terms of Scotland, France, you won't see so much. Like Stuart Hogg is the best in the world at kicking to manipulate a backline. Like there is just no one better than him. He kicks in a very old-fashioned style as well, which is really effective, but just generally harder to do than most in the spiral ball. And he's just like he's perfect at it. He can happily punt a ball. I think I've seen him do it 80 meters. Like he's just So expect to see a good amount of kicking in that game as well because Stuart Hogg is playing. So if that answers your question about kicking into the backfield and why they're doing it so much, that's kind of it. Sorry, I'm very long-winded with my explanations today.
No, you're grand. John, I just wanted to say this to you. I know now it's sort of switching a bit again, but I just want to say it to you about Ireland's try against France. The first try, you remember kicks off and what do you call him went up, got the ball. He's the new chap on the Irish team. I just can't think of his name now. Collected the ball and got through for the try. Now, it's very unusual for that to happen. But aren't the teams, when they kick off every time, trying to actually do that? Now, it's very hard because you have to judge everything perfectly with your kick and the player running and other players the defense has to make. Like France made a bags of that. Do you know, I think there was 3 players there. He went up and got free, and next thing he was gone over the line. It was some try, like, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean the winger you're thinking of there is Mac Hansen, who plays for Connacht. So that was like I mean Carberry's kick is really, really good there as well. Like you touched on.
Really?
Like it's got perfect hang time. He's dropped it on a penny. Like it's really, really good. And the thing is that when you say do teams not try and do that all the time, what teams often try and do is that type of kick you would see fairly regularly, but the intention would not be to gather the ball, to collect the ball. It would actually be to try and bundle someone into touch so you get the line out. Right. So that's a lot more common. Wales used to do that a lot with George North, and when they moved him into the centre recently, he was doing it again. You need pinpoint accuracy on the kick.
Yeah.
And normally they do it a lot shorter. Like normally they're aiming for like the 10-meter line just beyond. That was a very deep kick for that. Now, because I honestly don't know. I don't know if that's Hansen thought, oh, I can gather this and go with it, or if it was intentional that he was sent up to gather it. It looked intentional. Because it was just the arc of the kick was just fantastic. Like the arc of the kick was just out of the way for the French. So they had a lifting column there, and I was just too high for that, just arced over. And I think was it Entomac who was on the wing covering it? Probably shouldn't have been, but for some reason or maybe it was
French
Peno.
players there, I think anyway,
Yeah, there were three players. One of them was lifting. One was being lifted, and yeah, it was really impressive. Anyway, you're not.
Yeah.
It's. I doubt you'll see it again this week, but you probably won't see
I
it
think
for another
so.
2 years.
Don't think I can't remember seeing a try like that before, John. Now maybe it was covered. I can't. Now the other thing I just wanted to say to you, John, is now you know this, but I think I don't know how many years ago it is, but remember when the full back would be waiting for the ball to come down, they're after kicking off or whatever, and he's going to collect the ball, and if he goes to catch it this way with his hands in front of him like that, and he knocks it on, it's a knock on. But I think a couple of years ago, now it's a fair few years ago, I don't know how many, the players started to turn around with backwards and catch the ball coming over their head. And then if you knock it on, it's not a knock on then. Isn't that right? Isn't that way to do that? Some coach must have come up with that. I think anyway now, in recent years.
Not really.
Would it be right there?
I understand what you mean, but I don't know. It's in my experience anyway, it's harder to catch over your shoulder.
Oh, it is.
So it's like normally it's because someone is. So the one thing that you're taught constantly is don't take your eye off the ball. That's the most important thing. So for a lot of players, they are just sort of turning and they're looking up, and they rather than turn their body and then have to.
Well, that's the way I make it, John.
Get it like that, but I don't think it's because of risk of knock on. Maybe it is, but that seems that's anyone I know that's taken a kick like that has or received a kick like that. It's been because they're tracking backwards. They're running back to try and cover it in time. You bet you don't. It's not super common to even see in a lot of games. Maybe once a match, twice maybe.
Yeah. The other thing, John, was on a Sunday evening. I remember I was flicking. Now it's a year or two ago. I didn't get to do it now since the rugby started this year, because I think it's looking at Gaelic or something. I don't know. I didn't get to see it anyway. But there used to be a program on, I think it was on BBC 1 or 2 or UTV, and it's all the top guys talking about the three matches that's after been on. And you had all the real good Welsh players were in it, and English players, and everyone. And it used to be great discussion all about the rugby, because these guys like yourself, John, they understand all the rules of the game and everything. And they're all great they were all great players, and they're great men to discuss it on the television as well. They're able to get it across brilliant. I used to love looking at it. Now, I don't know what the program was. I forget what it was, but it was a preview. Now, RTE does it as well, and it is good on a Monday night now as well. But they used to do it, and it used to be on a Sunday evening. Now, I don't know whether it was a live or recorded or what way it was done, but it was great, very good program. Used to be. Now, I can't think of what it was, the name of it, But
yeah. I think the BBC has one as well. I know BBC Wales does Scrum 5, which is a very popular, not always going that deep into tactics or anything, but Scrum 5 on BBC Wales is decent. And then there's it's not much help to you, I'm afraid, but there's Club Rugby, which is the Welsh language one on S4C. You could get it with subtitles, but like that's that I generally find Club Rugby a bit better than the others, but
it's terrific. I think, John, I suppose, seeing that we're after going through everything, I think we just wrap it for today. What do you think of that?
Perfect. Yeah, I think just quickly, I'll just say, so I'm expecting Ireland by a healthy margin of 30. Wales, England, I think whoever loses probably with a losing bonus point. I think that'll be a lot closer than a lot of people are saying it will be. And France, Scotland have had France's number the last 2 years. It's in Murrayfield, which counts for a lot. But they're missing Jamie Ritchie as blindside, which is a massive loss for them. But I just seen today that they're starting Dodge, who is very entertaining to watch at 6. So, like, I just think that game is going to be an absolute mess of a breakdown, and therefore I'm going to love every second of it. I think, why not Scotland at home? I'd say Scotland at home. Probably,
Yeah.
and know what? It's probably going to be 2017 again, be their third match in a row with a 2017 score. Hopefully they win it this time.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go for Wales, John, to beat England, hopefully in Twickenham. And I'm going to go for Scotland against France and Ireland to beat Italy. They're my 3 predictions. I'm probably getting 3 of them wrong, John.
I know.
That's what it's all about.
It is.
Well, I should get one of them right, hopefully.
Grand. Thanks a mil, Tommy.
Okay, thanks, John.